diplomacy isn't a symbolic term to describe the fast-paced development of relations between China and the United States. The concept instead stems from a very literal definition that traces back to the game of ping pong. First originating in Victorian England as a parlor game and patented in 1890, the game arrived in China in the 1920s when British banker Ivor Montagu codified the rules of ping pong and created the International Table Tennis Federation. With the simplicity of constructing tables for playing and the little space required, the racket sport proliferated throughout China. Any family, co-workers, friends, rich or poor, across China could play at home and even at work or in the factories. Table tennis grew in popularity across China so rapidly that Chairman Mao Zedong decreed it as the national sport of China in the early 1950s. In 1959, Chinese player Rong Guotuan won the Table Tennis World Championship, becoming the first Chinese world champion in any sport, paving the way for China's dominance in the sport in the years to come. The next 3 world titles for table tennis went to Chinese player Zhuang Zedong in 1961, 1963, and 1965. Zhuang became instrumental in getting the ball rolling for ping pong diplomacy. Prior to the 1971 World Table Tennis Championship in Nagoya, Japan, relations between China and the United States had remained adversarial due to ideological differences and wars in Korea and Vietnam. When the table tennis teams from both China and the United States went to compete for the 1971 World Table Tennis Championship, a chance encounter between Zhuang and U.S. team player Glenn Cowan spawned not only an international sensation, but an unexpected opportunity to change U.S. China relations. Cowan missed the U.S. team bus to the game, but the Chinese team gave him a ride. Chinese team captain Zhuang, ignoring his teammates' awkward feelings over the Westerner, gifted Cowan a silk cloth with a depiction of the Huangshan Mountains. When the two stepped off the bus, they were photographed by journalists, with Cowan proudly displaying his new gift. Cowan reciprocated the Chinese team's goodwill the next day by gifting a T-shirt with a peace sign and the Beatles' iconic Let It Be to Zhuang. The Chinese government seized the opportunity to open the channel of communication between the two countries and extended an invitation on April 6, 1971, to the U.S. team to visit and play exhibition matches in China. The U.S. government responded by removing the restriction on travel to China on the passport of the American players. The travel ban to China had been in place for 20 years. Following the spirit of friendship first and competition second, the Chinese team played relaxed games with the Americans, so the results of the exhibition games were not so one-sided in favor of the Chinese players. This intersection of sports and politics led to a long-awaited thaw in the relations between the two countries, which had been stalled for nearly 2 decades since the founding of the PRC. The invitation to the table tennis team signaled China's interest in a friendlier relationship and provided President Richard Nixon and his administration the perfect avenue to move forward with open communication with China. On April 14, 1971, the day that the U.S. team met with China's Premier Zhou Enlai, President Nixon announced that the U.S. was easing its trade embargoes against China. In less than a week, China did the same. In July 1971, National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger made a secret trip to Beijing and prepared for President Nixon's visit to China in February 1972, marking the first time in history that an American president traveled to the Chinese mainland. 1 year later, the U.S. team invited the Chinese ping pong team to visit, and they were received warmly by the Americans. Subsequent diplomatic efforts culminated in the normalization of relationship between the two countries. For both Nixon and Mao, aligning their countries with each other and improving their relationship allowed them to achieve their political and economic objectives at home and abroad. the two governments held a series of negotiations and signed the Shanghai Communique in 1972, asserting their shared desire and mutual commitment to strive for peaceful relations. Agreeing to strategize towards further development of progress together across trade, science, technology, and culture while setting aside considerable differences, both countries seem to once more embody the friendship first and competition second philosophy that their athletes had exhibited on the world stage. From that chance encounter of American and Chinese athletes, the two countries went on to expand their collaboration and cooperation, which benefited their citizens and businesses. In 1972, U.S. China two-way trade totaled $95 million, and 50 years later, two-way trade stands at $657 billion. A half-century after ping-pong diplomacy paved the way for productive Sino-American relations, Washington and Beijing seem to spar over everything from economic and trade issues to science and technology to appropriate government systems and to their respective roles in the global community. Public opinion polls by the Pew Research Center and the Eurasia Group reveal high and rising levels of distrust and even hostility in each country's view of the other. So it is time to learn from the past to improve the future, even if the two countries are on two separate sides of the world, just like two separate sides of a ping-pong table. They can still reach across the table and work together on significant global challenges. Climate change, public health, smooth trade relations, and global security can only be solved with both countries working together. Competition between the U.S. and China is inevitable and should be welcomed. But at the same time, the spirit of friendship that characterized ping-pong diplomacy would be beneficial for both countries and the rest of the world. To learn more about ping-pong diplomacy and its origins, as well as its effects on international relations, go to the 1990 Institute website. Stay informed and stay engaged. Subscribe to our newsletters, video channel, and follow us on social media.